Now, going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek on climate change agenda going viral. Now, looks like this is him riding a good old train, or is it a train? Let's see here. But he posted this on the Twitter, or his 18 people call it X, on his personal account, and it got over 1 million views, or 1.4 million views in a day, which is pretty darn impressive to say the least. And it's only about 2.5 minutes long here, so I'll go ahead and, without further ado, I'll go ahead and play that.
The GOP establishment does not approve of this message, particularly the GOP establishment in Iowa, where I am right now. The carbon capture pipeline, the CO2 pipeline. This is the issue you're not supposed to touch. The political consultants tell you to stay away from it like the plague. Well, I refuse to be controlled. Here's what's happening. The global climate change agenda is a hoax, and the U.S. government is bending the knee to that hoax by enacting, and they have for a couple of decades now, incentives that effectively pay ethanol producers and others for capturing carbon dioxide and then burying it in the ground by building pipelines from the state of Iowa, ending in the state of North Dakota and otherwise, to capture that carbon dioxide. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this is totally senseless. Among them, the fact that carbon dioxide is plant food, and among them that there's also other alternatives to do this without a pipeline, such as through methanol conversion. But put that to one side. The real issue here is that many farmers in the state of Iowa and South Dakota and elsewhere do not want that pipeline running through their land, nor do they actually want to sell their land. So the politicians in Iowa, including, and this is the important part, the Republican establishment, have supported eminent domain to seize the property of those farmers. That's offensive. It's arguably unconstitutional.
Morally vacuous to say the least. Agreed.
And does not accord.
If you ever think you own your house or your land, just look up eminent domain and see what your government is doing to you, the people that they're supposed to be supporting and protecting, or so they say.
With the laws of eminent domain. Yet the reality is no other Republican politician, certainly presidential candidate, has the stones to say a thing about it, presumably because it will make the Republican establishment in Iowa not look very good for their failure of the farmers in Iowa. So on Friday at 12 o'clock, I'm going to host an event with the Free Soil Coalition, who has been incredibly focused on this issue. We should be able to talk about this in the open. Let's have a debate about the merits. Is there some really good reason why eminent domain needs to be used to unwillingly seize the land belonging to farmers so that they can build some sort of carbon dioxide pipeline to carry it all the way from Iowa into the ground in North Dakota? If so, the folks who are in favor of this, including the political class, shouldn't be afraid to hide from that debate. Yet what they're doing right now is telling politicians like me to shut up, sit down, do as you're told, and stay away from this issue. I refuse to be controlled, and I think we should have that debate and discussion out in the open, and I'm not afraid to say it.
So he brings up a good point, being that he's the first person to actually talk about this. Now, going to the comments section, again, I got about 1.4 million views and 22,000 likes when it came out a couple days ago. And someone by the name of, let's see here, scrolling through the comments, one of the top comments comes from Proud Patriot. This person says, quote, "They really aren't GOP anymore. It's just an extension of the Democratic Party made to feel like we have a choice," unquote, getting 818 likes, which I think a lot of people have a lot of sentiment and agreement with that statement, as noted and supported by the number of likes. Because again, with me, one of my passions, one of the things I'm fascinated about, one of the things I think is a human right is the right to defend yourself, the right to bear arms, the Second Amendment. And for my whole life, the Republicans have always said, we are believers in the Second Amendment, we're going to stand up for your rights. The NFA, National Firearms Act, passed in 1934. They've had almost 100 years to repeal that, and they haven't. And Republicans, at one point in my life, a couple of years ago, they had the president, they had the House of Representatives, they had the Senate. They couldn't even get suppressors off the NFA, so that suppressors could be purchased with a standard 4473 background check, paperwork and subsequent background check. No, they couldn't even do that. So to this day, if you want to buy a suppressor to protect your ears in the United States, you need to not only do a 4473 as well as a background check, but you also need to have a passport photo taken. You have to have your fingerprints done. You have to have this long, basically a 9-month waiting period because of the ineptitudes of the government. We have to actually get a physical tax stamp. You have to pay a $200 tax stamp thank God it wasn't adjusted for inflation. $200 in 1934 equates to about $40,200 now. And the process takes about 9 months for something that is your right. Imagine if it took 9 months to vote. Would anyone stand for that? No. But again, Republicans kept saying, we're going to fight for your gun rights. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for the small gains we've gotten throughout the years. But they keep saying we're big into the Second Amendment. Why can't you get these simple things replaced? Or rather, just get rid of them completely. Not just replace. I mean, get rid of it. Repeal it. And yet, there's only like 1 or 2 Republican candidates and people in government who are adamant about that. Most of them don't bring it up, or they just use the same cliche talking points, like, I believe in the right to bear arms. Like, yes, okay, you're saying that, but how are you going to get the job done? What are you going to do? So I think more and more people are having this sentiment of, well, what's the GOP doing? They're saying a lot of things, but are they really fighting the good fight? Are they just clocking in and clocking out like a mediocre employee, just putting in the bare minimum so they can make, well, I believe the salary for those, what is it, House of Representatives make like $250,000 plus retirement plus healthcare benefits? Needless to say, I'm pessimistic to say the least. Now, going back to the comments section, someone by the name of Westy says, quote, Ronna will take care of it. And it looks like an AI-generated picture of Ronna McDaniel, who is the head of the RNC, dressed up as a clown. Which, I'm going to say it's alleged. It's all too real in terms of metaphors, since, again, the RNC has the lowest amount of funds generated and the greatest amount of losses under her ineptitudes of leadership. Again, I have no idea how she sells the job. And that got 561 likes. Someone by the name of Andrew Wong says, quote, seeing the usual suspects pushing climate change made a skeptic out of me, unquote. That got 171 likes. Additional comments, you have someone by the name of Stormy Knight says, quote, they don't realize that by going after farms, that will be one step too far, unquote. Getting 111 likes. Black Dumpling says, quote, I didn't even know this was a thing. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, unquote. Getting 360 likes. John Novith Raven Drovith says, quote, farmers are the lifeblood of any given society and government should stay out of their land and their liberty, period, unquote. Getting 113 likes. Luke says, quote, funny how DeSantis and Trump will only bring up this issue because Vivek is making it an issue. Vivek is a real swamp drainer and whistleblower, unquote, getting 428 likes. Let's see here. Melvis says, quote, if they were serious, they'd be expanding nuclear. It's a grift, unquote, getting 70 likes, which, I mean, yes, nuclear is one of the cleanest, most efficient forms of generating power that we have, and yet the U.S. doesn't go all in on that, which is ridiculous. Some might argue nuclear power is actually 100% renewable and recyclable because the byproduct is depleted uranium, which is used by the military for tank busters because it is one of the most dense materials on the planet. Fun little fact of the day. Someone by the name of Y says, quote, I'm now interested in seeing if they do and if this becomes a larger issue going forth. You already have people talking about the northern border, unquote, getting 65 likes. C says, quote, the only conservative left standing is Vivek, the real deal, unquote, getting 93 likes. Again, it'll be interesting to see how much this translates to the polls because, again, that's the issue. Vivek is saying a lot of great things. He's getting a lot of social media attention. I would argue, actually, he's arguably the most successful Republican nominee in terms of social media. He has a lot of the highest interactions, a lot of the most likes, and yet he's about half of Nikki Haley in terms of the amount of poll or votes he's getting for the Republican nominee in all of these preliminary polls. She's about 10%, and this is the poll aggregator known as 539. It is a aggregator that takes all the polls and averages them together. That average of that is about between 5 and 7 points ahead of him in the polls when you look at Nikki Haley's numbers. So Nikki Haley's around 10%, DeSantis is usually around 13%, Vivek is usually around 5%, and Trump's all the way up at like 57 to 61% on average. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this translates to the polls, or why isn't it? Is it because people aren't seeing it, or people don't agree with it? Most of the comments when we review his Twitter or his X, whatever you call a social media company, I mean, most of the comments are overwhelmingly supportive of Vivek. I think the worst take he ever had, or worst tweet he had about 50-50 split in regards to the feedback. So it'll be fascinating to see if these statements help push them ahead in the polls, or it just doesn't translate. But as I always say, time shall tell. Thank you everyone again for taking the time to tune in today. Please take the time to subscribe. We're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of December, and your support is greatly appreciated. Also, leaving comments is a great way to leave me some feedback on how I can make the show better and better and improve the quality. Also, and lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.